So in this next section, we're going to have a look at developing our photos. We're going to edit them. This is what we're actually here for. So we're going to look at presets, which will help with, say, black and white or color adjustments. We're also going to do a little manual color adjustment. We're also going to look at how to use highlights and shadows. We're also going to look at how to reduce some noise as well. And just basic ways to quickly edit your photos and get straight on with what you want to do. So let's head straight back in. Okay guys, so here we are back in Lightroom. Now we're going to start our editing process. So I'm going to make sure I've got the photo I want to click, which in this case will be my first photo. I'm going to start at the beginning. And then I'm just going to go up to this here, which says develop, and I'm just going to click on it. And here we are, it's opened it up, and this is our editing suite. This is where we're going to do our editing to the photos, make them look as we want. Now, first thing I'm going to start with is the cropping. So over here where it says crop overlay, we're just going to press on here, and you'll see this grid turn up. And we can move this in from the sides, back and forth as much as we want. Now what I want to do here is take out some distractions. For instance, over here in this corner, this little bubble on the frame of the fence is just a little distracting in the corner. So I'm just going to bring it in slightly, and just take it out. And again here, this lady here is a little bit of distraction. She's half in, but she's not really there, so I'm going to take her out a little bit by bringing it in slightly from this corner. And when we're done, I'm just going to press enter or just press done down here in this box. And there we go. Now you can see there's still a few distractions. For one, there's this little dot down here, there's a branch over here slightly, and I don't quite like this arrow that's faded out on the ground. So I'm going to go up here to the spot removal tool. I'm just going to click on there, and you'll see this dialog open here. Now I've got a little cursor brush here, and it's a little bit bigger for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the open and close brackets to make this bigger or smaller. So if I use the closed bracket, it gets bigger. If I use the open bracket, it gets smaller. And I'm just going to hover it over until it's about the same size. And there we go. I'm going to press there. And then, as you can see, it picks an area. Now I can move this by just clicking and holding, and it'll pick a different area. And you'll see it'll just pop up different. But I like where it actually started, so I'm going to leave it about there. Now to start another brush, all I have to do is click on another area. But for this, it's slightly going to have to be bigger. So I'm going to press the close bracket. And that's a bit big. There we go. And again, it'll pick an area. And again, I quite like where that is. And as you can see, overlaid, so it's gone. Now the brush I'm going to bring up here to this branch. Again, I'm going to make it smaller, which is the open bracket. And I'm just going to click on where it is. And there we go. It's picked an area. And yep, that's the area I want. And when I'm finished with that, all I have to do is press enter or done. And there we go. Those spots are removed and those little distractions are gone, which is quite nice. I quite like that. Now, the only thing about this picture, it's very blue. I live in Ireland. We don't get a lot of sunlight, so I want to make it look a little bit brighter. Now, there are two ways of doing this. I can go over to this eyedropper, the white balance selector, and try and pick a gray area, somewhere you know is gray. And as you can see, if you go over to the side over here, this preview will change according to what it selects. And yeah, that's very yellow, so I'm going to pick that. It's a little too yellow for me. If I want to change that, I can adjust it by just moving the temperature bar here, up or down, so it adds more blue or more yellow. That's quite nice there. I quite like that, so I'm going to leave it at that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to this auto button. Now this will adjust the exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, whites, and the blacks according to this histogram up here. Now, if it has a lot of blacks, it'll probably do something really weird. So if you have a black background you want to be black, it'll probably try and brighten that out because it doesn't believe that you're supposed to have that much black in it. So usually if there's a black background, I don't use the auto, I do it manually. But for this, there's plenty of light in here, so I'm just going to press the auto button. And there you go, it just adjusts slightly everything there. It doesn't do a huge amount, but there we go, you see, now it's brightened it out slightly. And yeah, I quite like that. It makes it look brighter. It makes it look like a nicer day. Whites are whiter. The highlights are a bit, stand out a bit more. Quite happy with that. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here. And just grab this. There we go. And we've got this next dialog down here. It has clarity, vibrance, and saturation. Now we're going to play with the clarity first. Now the clarity, if you go up this side, will make things crisper or slightly harsher, so the blacks will get blacker. If we go down this side, it'll soften everything out and make the whites a bit more whiter. So if we just bring it down first to start with, and you'll see everything goes very soft. And I see this a lot, and I'm not a fan of it myself. I don't really like doing this to a lot of things. People do it to people's faces in order to make the skin a bit more I don't know, clearer and softer on females, and it just doesn't look quite right. So I don't usually go that way. But if we go the other way, I'll just bring it up slightly, you'll see all of these railings here become very crisp and all these blacks. However, it does darken the entire scene. The blacks become very intense. So I'm going to go back up and just on where it says blacks, I'm just going to move this up a little bit back to a little bit to normal where it was average, maybe a little bit more, just to compensate for that clarity. And there we go, that's a lot crisper. You can see on these railings here, it works a lot better. Now, the next thing here is the vibrance. You can use vibrance for many things. Again, if you go down, it will take the color out. And you get this almost black and white with a hint of dark colors in it, and it becomes very black and white. In fact, if you go all the way down, you pretty much get this very black and white. Slight colors like this yellow you can see and this red still stay in it. But if I'm going to do black and white, I usually do that manually, and we'll go to that later. But I'm going to actually take the vibrancy up a little bit and just make this a little bit brighter again, and just make those colors pop on a sunny day kind of feel to it. Now we can play with the saturation a little bit, but I'm not too fond of messing with the saturation too much because it does some weird things sometimes. So if I bring that up, this red, I mean the yellow comes out, but the red becomes this orange, and it's just a little too intense for me. So I usually leave that roughly where it is. Unless I really want a certain color to pop out, I don't really mess with that too much when I'm just doing basic editing. Now, the next thing we're going to go on to for this picture is what's called the adjustment brush, which is this bit here. Now, this is actually quite fun because it means you can mess with just little bits of the area of the picture without having to distort every piece of it. So, for instance, this water, I want it to be a little bit more bluey. I want it to, you know, pop a little bit more, balance out this bright red here by making that stand out. So we go up here and we just press on the adjustment brush, and a new dialog will open up. Now, this dialog is purely for what we're about to do. So again, if I press here, we've got a brush sort of thing, and again, it's the open and close brackets will make it bigger or smaller. So that's bigger, smaller, and I'm going to just press it about here, and I'm just going to stroke across here for a second. Now, as you can see, that's already popped up with a deeper blue, and that's because this temperature is more towards the blue area. So if I bring this down, that'll get more intense, and more intense. We don't want it that intense. It was quite nice where it was, so we'll say about here. Now, if I actually press on here, give it a second, that there is what we call the mask layer. That's what's affected by it. Now, it'll just stay for a second and go away, just so as you can keep an eye on it. So I'm going to make this brush slightly smaller. I'm going to open brackets, close it, and I'm just going to run across there by holding the button down, and again there. You can see along here there's a bit more, and I'm actually going to make that slightly smaller, a little bit more, there we go, and just bring it across. And the same again here, adjusting the size of my brush as I go along, a bit more here, and I've got a little bit in here, so I'm just going to make this smaller, and just get every little piece here, just so it's even. Right, so there we have it. Now a little bit here as well, actually I've missed. Now, I can use all of these controls, and that will affect the area which I just selected. So if I want to bring up the exposure, say, and it brightens it out a little bit. Ooh, way too much. So we'll bring that back down. Maybe we'll just play with the highlights to make it a bit brighter. It takes some of the blue out. It's a little too intense for me, so I'm just going to bring it back a little bit. Oh, that's not. There we go. That's quite nice. So now we've got this blue water that balances out against this red a little bit, I think, and it just makes the water look nice, and it makes it stand out more. Now you can play around with everything here. You can play with the saturation, make it more intense, bring it down so it's less intense, in fact, basically not there. Clarity, if you want to soften out the water, in which case you get the softness to it, or you can make it harsher if you want to make it more detailed, but I think that's just a little too harsh. We'll just make it a tiny bit softer here. Actually, I'll leave it there. And again, you can play around with all of these, and you can play around with everything on here over and over again. Now, if you've done this and you want to affect another color, say we want to play with the greens up here maybe a little bit, we go on to New, and you'll see the dot from the center of that will leave, and we can press up here, and we've got a new point that will actually reset everything, and this here will actually be a completely different one. So we can just play around here a little bit. Again, if I press on here, we can see what we're affecting. if I actually press on it properly. There we go. So we know that's what we're affecting. So I can add more green in there if I want, actually, for a bit of a tint to it. I can add a yellow in there. We can actually make that darker if we think it stands out too much. I'll bring that back then. I can expose that area a little bit more just to take it out. Put in shadows to darken it out because it stands out too much. Whatever we like. I'm actually going to get rid of that one though because I'm not quite fond of it, all I have to say. Keep that. So if I hover over that and we right click, we can just go down to delete, and that'll get rid of that whole area but not affect this one. So that's just a quick way of how to use the adjustment brush. And we just go down here and we press done or enter, and there we go, and that dialog closes and we're back to our normal dialog. And that's all I'm going to do with that photo, guys, and I quite like the way that's turned out. So I'm going to leave that and we're going to move on to the next one. Now, instead of going back into the library, all I have to do here is use the arrow keys, and I'm just going to press the right one to move on to the next photo. And there we go, that loads up. Just wait for it to get all its settings, and that dialog, you'll know when it's ready when this dialog lights up and that histogram. Okay, now we have our next picture open. So what we're going to actually deal with is the presets over here. Now if I just press on this top where it says Lightroom black and white filters, and we just press this button here, and it opens this dialog down. As I hover down, you'll see in this preview over here what will happen if I press on it. I can do all of these different ones, which are based basically on the colors involved in the picture. Is how it decides how to adjust these. You can go down, all of these will be different. You can just flick through them as much as you want and try them, and you can click on them and have a look and see how it actually looks. But I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to actually go down to the black and white presets and see what we have here. High contrast, low contrast, just different ways of looking at it. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the toned presets, which acts a bit of color in almost black and white. So it's black and white with one color in it, slight different tones are changing. And we're going to go, you know, I like this one here, but we'll go down the rest of them just so you can see what they are. And yeah, I like the split tone. So I'm going to press on that one. And that's automatically going to affect everything in there already. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and just do the auto again. This one, there's not huge amounts of black, so it shouldn't mess up the auto. And we just press it. And there we go. Now we've got this very different style because we've adjusted it slightly and the tonal split has been applied to it. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some clarity because I want to see if I can get some of these feathers to turn up on the neck and maybe make these splash in the water a little bit crystal clearer. So I'm going to bring this up slightly. And there we go, so that's defined that water a lot better. You can see in the splash that are a lot more defined. But specifically in this one, you can see in the feathers on the neck of the swan and on the side. However, this white patch is very blown out now, so it is. So what I'm going to do is, that's the highlights. I'm going to bring them down and watch as more of the detail of those feathers come in. So you can see along the side here and along here, a lot more of it's come up. And even these feathers are more defined because of the shadows that are allowed to come through. In fact, if I bring the shadows down a little bit more, and just make that a little bit more detailed, and I'm actually going to add a slight bit more clarity, which is going to darken it slightly. And there we go, so you can see all of these feathers on the neck are popping now. You can see some of the detail around the side of the feathers here, and a lot more of it here isn't as blown out. But I want to keep that white, because I want the highlight, but I didn't want it to be so just blown out white with no detail in it. And I quite like that, so that's where I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to do anything else to that, and we'll just move on to the next one. So it's the arrow right key, and tap. And here we are, straight on to the next one. Give it a second to open up. There we go, all of the dialogue's lit up. We know we're ready to go. So here we are with the next photo. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop this, because there's a lot of dead space over here I really don't need, and I want the photo to concentrate on this couple here with the glasses on. So I'm just going to press on the crop tool, and drag in from the corner, and somewhere about there. I want that line to be, you know, kind of there, but I want to leave space for them to be looking at, because that's what they're doing. They're looking out on a lovely scene, so I want to keep that. So again, press this button here, or just press enter. And there we go. That's our picture we're going to work with. Now again, I'm going to use the presets over here. Except this time I'm going to go with, let's have a quick look here. Yeah, I'm going to go this side. So again, we've got all of these different settings, and we just run through them. We can see them in the preview window. And let's have a quick look down. It's a bit too much. That's quite nice. And it's too blue. not much of a change. It does brighten things up, but it's not quite different. So I'm gonna go with this cross process 2. I quite like it. It's a bit faded, it's a bit old like, so I'm gonna go with that. And there we go. Now, as per usual, I'm going to auto this again, because again, there's not a huge amount of black in there, so it shouldn't be overpowered. There we go, I quite like that. Now, it's brightened it out as well, but the glasses is what stands out here. And I'm going to have a quick look, and I'm going to... The clarity's already been brought up because of the post-processing, it's part of it. But I can still play with that if I want. I can still play with the vibrancy if I want, and bring it up slightly and see what happens. And those glasses start to stand out a bit more, and I quite like that. And you know what? I'm quite happy with that. It's got the feel I look. It might be a bit bright, so I'm actually going to bring the highlights down a little bit. Maybe the white as well, because it's blown out a little bit to the side here. Yeah, I quite like that actually. I'll bring the exposure slightly down though. Nope, that's way too much. There we go. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that like that. It's maybe not everyone's taste, but I quite like it. It makes the glasses stand out. We've got the view of everyone looking across here. I quite like it. And so we'll just move on to the next one. And again, just press the arrow key to the right. Wait for it to open. And here we go, straight into the next one. Once this dialog opens and we see it highlighted with the histogram, we're ready to go. Okay. So here we are, we've got a girl sitting on a bench. I'm going to do a quick black and white on this one. I'm not going to go into a huge amount, we'll go into other ways. We've done one way of looking at presets in the black and white, but the other way is if we go up to here and we can see color and black and white. If we just press on the black and white treatment, and there we go, it just turns it black and white for you. Now again, you can adjust this like anything else before. We'll start with the auto just to see how it turns out. Brightens it out a little bit. I think the shadows we're going to bring down slightly here, just to give it a bit more depth. Maybe we're going to bring the clarity up, which we know is already going to darken, so I don't want to darken it too much, so I'm going to bring the clarity up, because I like a bit of clarity in my black and white photos sometimes. There we go, we can see the box getting a little bit darker and so on and so forth. And I'm fine with that. However, if you're doing a lot of black and whites, sometimes it's easier to sync photos. So what actually we're going to do is we're going to go back to the library, which we're going to click up here. Here we have our photo. Now, if you're doing, say, like this street photography, and you just want to do black and white, you don't want to spend a lot of time editing at all, what you can actually do is just do one edit and make everything else the same edit. Immediately, without having to go into every photo. You can just press the button and do it basically. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to take this photo and this photo, and we're just going to make this one exactly the same edit as that. So first of all, we make sure we're clicked on this one. Then we're going to hold down the shift button, and we're going to click in here as well, so it highlights the boat. And as you'll see, these two boxes link up here. Now we're not too fussed about the sync metadata one at the moment, but this sync settings we do. So we just press on here, and up a new box will, and it will tell you everything that it will do to the next picture according to what's been done to the last one. Now, I don't change this. I leave this exactly as it is. So it only does certain things. Like I never use the crop one because crop's always different according to what you want to do with a picture depending on what's in it. So I just leave this as it is for the moment and just press synchronize. Give it a moment. Once it's synchronized, this picture will then have the exact same look as this one up here. Just takes a second to pop up. As you can see, it's doing it there. You can see there's the edit. And there we go. Those two pictures have the exact same processing as the one that you started with. Now you can do this with 100 photos if you want. You can do it with 10 photos. Just make sure that the first one you click on is the one that had the first edit in it. And then using the control or command if you're on an Apple, holding it down, click on the pictures you want to have the exact same edit, and then just come down here, sync, and away you go. So that's that one. Those two pictures done for a very little amount of time. So we're going to move on to the next picture. So we're just going to click on here, and we're going to go back into develop. Always, when you want to be developing a specific photo, make sure you are clicked on that one when you go into develop, or you have to start looking through it for the arrow keys. And here we are. Now I'm very fond of this photo. I nicknamed it the Harriet Potter photo because it's just I like the idea of the Harry Potter kind of with the wand and birds around. Makes it look like a little wizard running around, or a witch, or whichever you want, and just having fun. I love taking pictures of kids who are just having fun and playing. Now the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to crop this, because I don't really want this lady here, and I want to see if I can take some of this out of the way. So I'm going to crop here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in from this corner to take this lady out, and just bring it in to about there, because I want to make sure that bird's in it. I don't want anything distracting. Now I don't want this line up top, so I'm going to bring this in. Now, here's where we get into what is kind of the rule of thirds when coming to positioning a photo. So you see these grids here. You want your picture, if you want the rule of thirds, if you're not putting it down the center column, you want to keep your picture along these lines, crossing in some way, whether it be here or along here. Now, she has her arms out, so this actually makes it a little bit easier. So if I just pull it up so as the line kind of goes through her body centrally, and the arms are kind of along this line here, it gives you the rule of thirds. So we're just going to press the done button or enter, and there we go. So it's a lot cleaner. She's definitely the subject of it, but we've got space for all of these birds that are flowing around her, and I'm quite happy with that. I am going to make this into a black and white though, so I'm just going to go over here, press black and white. I'm going to do this manually myself. I'm going to press the auto button here as well, and there we go. It's just lined it up slightly, which is fine by me. I am going to bring the shadows in a little bit. I want a bit more detail in the wings of the birds and things like that. And there we go. Now, the one thing you'll notice is her skin's immediately got dark, and that's just not natural in the slightest. But I like the way the birds are all black-headed and the wings are shadowed and everything like that, but her skin really doesn't work for it. So that's easily taken care of. If I roll down here, and if I come to, let's see, black and white here. Now, skin tone is usually orange, so that's what I'm going to deal with here. I'm just going to brighten her skin out from here on up. So if I grab this, and as I go, you can see that's having an effect purely on her skin, because nothing else in the picture is really orange. And I'm going to bring it up a bit more, and there we go. I quite like that. Her skin looks a bit more natural. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go all the way up there. There we go. So she's got a nice, clearer skin there. Now you can mess with some of these other ones, depending on what colors are in your picture. You can play with the reds, and that brings up. Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm going to keep that because that brings that up a little bit more. Let's try the yellow a little bit. That's the grass. Actually, you know, I want to keep the grass a little bit more darker. In fact, if I bring up the green, it should have the same effect. I'm actually going to make it a little darker there. Let's see, we play with the purple, see what happens there. That's a bit of blue. And a dress comes up a little bit more. And so you can adjust your black and whites by using this. This will only affect those specific colors. So I can get darker if I want. Or there we go, it actually brings out a bit more detail in the dress. I'm going to keep that. There we go. And just play around with them. That's just how it works. Now, again, if we wanted to sync this setting with something else, so because I have the orange skin tone in there, and I know the next picture has a little bit of skin tone in it, so I'm actually going to just sync that one with my last one, because I know the skin tone in here. So again, I make sure that one's clicked first, holding down the Control or Command if you're on an Apple, click on that picture, and again, you'll see the Synchronize button comes up, it lights up. I'm going to press on it. Again, just press to synchronize. Give it a moment to actually apply those settings. There we go. So now I've got the exact same, and it's kind of worked. That my skin tone's right, the grass is quite nice. I quite like all of it. The only thing with this picture is this one I need to crop, but that's fine. I can actually just go back into Develop, and I can still play with all of these settings if I want to adjust it slightly, if one thing isn't quite exactly how I want it. So I'm going to just come on here, and she's slightly over to the side, so I'm going to bring this corner in. That's a little too far. And there we go. She's actually dead center. What I actually want is the lettering dead center. So if I press enter or done just down here in the corner, there we go. It's more centralized. However, you can see here that this isn't coming up quite well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play with the clarity. I want to make those lines a little bit more crisper. And just whack the clarity up a little bit. There we go. We've got a lot more defined actual lettering. I'm going to bring it up a bit more. I want it really defined. I want the lettering, you know, this to be the photo. So I'm going to call it kinda care, kinda don't. I like the photo. However, you will see, though, a lot of noise has now appeared in this black. And it's not quite as crisp as I'd like it. We can deal with noise in Lightroom. It actually is something that can be dealt with. So I'm going to close this dialog down, and we're going to go to detail. I'm going to open that up. Give it a moment, and there we go. It's actually landed on there. So we can see close up. Yep, that's a lot of noise. It's not crisp, it's not black. Well, we can deal with that. So that's usually created by the luminosity. And we can do the noise reduction. It says it right there. And we're just going to bring that up. And if you just watch this window here, some of that noise starts to disappear bit by bit. So we're going to rank it right up. And we're going to go all the way up here. There we go. You see, it's actually very solid now, but I'm actually just going to bring this all the way up because it's black and white. I don't mind, and I don't mind what it does. There you go. You can see that all of that is pure black now. You can actually see it here, and it has made a difference along here, so that's actually a lot more crisper, and that's what I want. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the sharpness up because I've lost a bit of detail by doing that. Now, that's the one thing you have to remember when you reduce noise in a picture. You are going to lose a certain amount of detail. Depending on the picture, depends on how much you do. I wouldn't normally do this with a color. If I was doing it with color, I'd only go to about here because I would lose a lot of detail in the rest of the picture. Because this is black and white, I can get away with it. Now, most people don't reduce noise out of a black and white photo because, well, black and white photos by its nature from old cameras consisted of having a lot of noise, so we're used to seeing it sometimes. But this is more like something for a poster or something like that, which the lettering is the important part here for me. So I'm going to just put that straight back up. But I am going to bring a bit more detail back into sharpness. Now, sharpness doesn't always work really, really well, but for these lines, I want this detail to read really, really clearly. And I bring a bit more clarity into that. I have no problem doing it. And there we go. We have a solid lettering now. And I quite like that. So that's how I look at lettering sometimes. You'll see it sometimes, whether it be on posters, in windows when you're doing street photography, and sometimes you want them to stand out, sometimes you don't. But for this one, that's kind of what the shot is all about. So that's how we do our editing. So we just go back to library. That's how you get through editing pretty quickly. If you want to synchronize photos, so you only have to do the first photo and you want them all to look the same, you only have to edit one photo and synchronize all the rest by selecting them. Or you can go in and use the presets, or you can do a bit of manual there as well. Now, there is a lot more you can do in Lightroom, but we're just doing a quick edit to get you started, and later videos will go through more detail of what you can do in it. But for now, that's how you pretty much can get through photos pretty quickly, from organizing them to editing them. So now all we're left with is the outputting.